Hi, everybody. It's Mark Hanna, and I've got Doug Leslie on the line. I say hi, Doug.
Hi, Mark.
All right. So we're here to discuss defenses, particularly. I've found that my defenses, I'm just going to say it in a quick word, they've been sucking lately. And I've been really frustrated with not being able to play defense well. Doug has introduced me to a couple of articles. One by, well, tell them about the articles that you sent over to me, Doug, um, for defensive strategies.
Well, the first one is by Toby Pilling, who did a very detailed article about defense in ASL in Le Frompteur, issue number 12, and highly recommend it to anybody that's wanting to improve their defensive play. Obviously, Toby's a very strong player, one of the best there is, and obviously he has got a lot of very good ideas that he imparts in the article. And I think the other one that I sent you was a link to Jim Bishop's website. He does a lot of ASL articles, but he also did uh, articles on defence. And I think his is more, maybe less specific than Toby's, but more of a generalised approach, i.e., breaking down all the different types of defence that there are,
Hmm.
and analysing the sorts of situations that a particular defence might be applied. And I think actually, when we get onto our defences, I think we have both used different types of defence
Yes.
that fall into the category that Jim Bishop would
Right.
or mention
Right.
in his article.
Well, let's
Um,
go into that for a moment. In a moment. Okay. Okay. So as Doug just mentioned, he said that we are both using two different types of defenses. I read Jim Bishop's article, and he had some interesting names for different defensive layouts that could be done. Toby Piling or Pilling, I don't know how to say his name exactly correctly. I've never met him, but he's quite one of the top 10 players. I'm sure of it, and recently on Area. And I just recently played Michael Hastrup Leff, if I said that name correctly, a Danish player. He's one of the top 10 players, and he totally greased my rear end. This is ASL J7 130. This is uh, Italian. What is it called? Um,
the Art of Dying.
the Art of Dying. Yeah, the Art of Italian Dying, except I was the Art of Russian Dying
Yeah,
in mine.
yeah.
And I've felt frustrated with my defensive tactics. You know, when I read Toby's article, I don't think there's anything I've been really missing in terms of these general concepts that he came up with. Doug, what I found out interesting about Toby's article is the emphasis he put on skulking. Do you want to
Yeah.
comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Toby's when any defensive setup he does, the ability to skulk is the probably one of the most important things that he considers. I suppose that's fairly standard. I think skulking's pretty much um, routine, I guess,
Sure.
for most players now. But yeah, I mean, it's skulking, route paths, um, allocation of forces, how many units to put with each leader, so on and so forth. It's very detailed. It's got a lot of other
Yeah.
aspects to it. There's fortifications, deception, you name it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Right.
yeah,
How to maximize deception when you're concealing if you have dummies. How to you know, again, deploy to create mixed stacks of dummies and try to make it hard for the attacker to find out where you are. So some interesting concepts. One of them I thought was interesting was leaving off a hip deliberately, so the guy always thinks you got a hip that you never
yeah,
actually ever play.
yeah.
And one guy did beat me, another good player. This was way back at Aslock, I think, when I went. He did the hide the AT gun way off the playing field area, and then on the last turn run the crew into a building to win the game.
Uh-huh.
I was not happy about that particular way of defeating me. That was not the best
Yeah.
way for me to learn that particular tactic. I don't know if anybody's used that on you, but I didn't appreciate it.
No, I haven't experienced it, but it's something that is always at the back of my mind.
Yeah, it has to be.
I've noticed that there are one or two scenarios that have been coming out more recently where you have to place your hip units on board, like in the penultimate turn, under a concealment counter. And I think it's precisely to stop that sort of tactic so that your opponent will then know there's something there and can take steps to deal with it. You can't just sneak your crew on and win the game that way. It's a bit of a cheap way to win, but it's perfectly legal. And I suppose even a tournament, I guess anything goes. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah,
No,
it's
absolutely. It
certainly
was a tournament,
yeah,
and anything does go. And Toby wins tournaments, and that's what that article was about.
yeah,
You might want to juxtapose that with my particular view that I think skulking is too far baked into the game, as so is vehicle bypass freeze. And he mentions those both as things that you have to deal with, and you do have to deal with them. So,
yeah.
aside from the fact that I'd like to see those removed from the game, that's never going to happen. So, that's a totally different topic. So, let's look at some of these defenses here, and we'll start with mine
Yep.
real quick because this is what I would say this particular defense is what lost me the game. And it right off the bat, you can see that I've got what would you call this, like an Alamo
Yeah,
defense?
that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You've started in an Alamo defensive posture. You've got most of your units all concentrated around the church there. I think you've got two units on the ground floor. You've got your guns there,
Right.
and then you've got the medium machine gun in the building to the rear. And if you can hold that, you win the game. The problem is whether you have enough force there to hold it. And maybe it'd be helpful if people haven't played this scenario to explain
What's going on?
what happens,
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
basically
Yeah.
basically in this scenario, because I played the same scenario in the same competition last year, but not against a top 10 player in the world, I'd have to say. So I maybe didn't have the challenge that Mark was facing, without any
Well,
disrespect
I
to my
think you've
opponent.
played him
But
before too, haven't you?
no, I played it once last year, so it was really interesting to see that you were going to be playing against Michael.
I know, but
Um,
you played Michael. You know
I
how he
played
plays.
Michael in a different scenario, and like you, I got my butt well and truly kicked by him. So,
It was
he,
amazingly how easy he was able to
yeah,
do it. It's like, what did I
he's
do wrong around this place?
he's cut a swathe through us. Well, he did get a critical hit. My main anti-tank weapon, light mortar, that didn't help. But
Well,
anyway,
luck is always a factor,
yeah,
but
yeah,
anyway. So, okay, so you were saying
yeah.
then
So
that
what's happening? Basically, you can see this little hamlet where the Russians are set up, and there's a fairly large force of Italians which has to capture six building hexes. Only it's greater than equal to six building hexes. And those of you who are numerate will see there are only, in fact, six buildings in the victory area, which are all marked. But the key there is that the guns each count as a victory building in effect. If you capture a gun,
hmm
then it's one less building that you have to take. So the Italians can win if they capture five buildings and one gun, for example.
right,
But
right.
so the Italians start with a very strong force, but then the Russians have a very powerful reinforcing
That's right.
group that enters from the south edge, and if that group can make it to the hamlet, then they should be able to fight off the Italians quite easily. So the key, really, I think, in this scenario is can the Russians get to the victory area in time to stop the Italians wiping out the starting defences, and that's basically in a nutshell
Right, here's the
how it
reinforcing
works.
Russians here that
Yeah,
come in. They get two of these radioless tanks,
yeah,
which are pretty decent, as good
yeah,
as the Italian ones,
yeah,
and then quite a few squads, even some elites.
yeah.
So that's what comes in, but you don't get that coming in till turn two. So the Italians have a chance to get on the map
Exactly.
and
Yeah,
try to interdict that
that's
force.
it. Yeah,
Okay, so that's so the whole thing comes down to Can you save? Can you not lose 6 buildings, and then each gun lost counts as 1 building less
Yeah.
that the Italians have to get.
Yeah.
Also, there's a special rule here for this steeple, even though it's treated as an LOS of level 2. It's actually only at level 1, so there's actually not an intermediate. We play that there's no intermediate level 1. You just move directly to the steeple, but
Yeah.
it just happens to have an LOS at that
Yeah.
base
Yeah.
here. So obviously it can see over. There's some blind hexes here. But if Italian tanks are coming around this flank, if they're on the hill, if they're coming across these fields, an ATR up here is the logical place to put an ATR. And I think
Yeah.
even Doug put, of course, an ATR in the same
Yeah.
place.
I mean, you've got to choose. You either put the ATR there or the medium machine gun. But I think the ATR is the right um, weapon to put there because the Russians have to have something that can threaten the Italian armor,
Yeah.
and the ATR is all you've really
No, they're not that
got.
great. They've got an 8. There's what are they? Base 6 plus 1 at 7 for range, but the Italian armor's got an armor factor of 3 or 4, so
Is it is it base 6 or base 5? But it's 6 when
it's
you get
Russian.
to.
It's Russian art ATRs.
Yeah, yeah. Normal ATRs are 4. Hang on a minute, I could be wrong.
Normal
I think
ATRs are 5s, I think, Doug.
no, they're 4. Oh no, the machine
That's
guns are 4.
machine
Sorry, you're right.
guns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Sorry, get mixed
yeah.
up. Yeah,
But
yeah.
the Russians are
It's
6.
yeah,
I'm
that's
trying to
right.
find the chart here, but you can see
That's right.
vehicle
Yeah,
to kill right here. The ATR, Russian ATR is a 6, so it's a 7.
yeah. Close
Um,
range, it's a 7. Yeah.
but these things are 3 and 4, plus they're small, so you're not going to get any guaranteed kills from a frontal aspect.
No.
So, but it does force the Italians to be careful to a certain extent with their tanks. So anyway, that's what's going on. So let's. Here's my setup here. All right, so in Doug's setups here, let's zoom in on his a little bit too, so we're kind of in the same. There we go. So I've done an Alamo defense, and Doug over here, this is more of a linear defense, isn't it? I mean, you've put a
Um.
lot of stuff up front.
Yeah.
There's
I would
not.
say
It's not in depth, really.
it's a fighting withdrawal defense. I think. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
my plan. The Italians are coming from the west, and so basically, I've set up so I can shoot at anything that comes beyond the wood line to the west of where I'm set up. But the intent is that I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to fall back gradually, force the Italians to spend um, to cover cross 2 hexes to engage, and most of them have only got a morale level of 6, so
True.
you can do a fair bit of damage. But I think I think the reason why I chose the defense I did as opposed to what you've done
Yeah.
is that I think it's very important to keep some control of the woods because what you want is to have that ATR that you see at the front there. I wanted that in the woods to shoot at any Italian tanks that tried to intercept the Russian reinforcements. But
Right.
they needed to have guys around them to stop the Italians just marching their infantry in and wiping it out. So I thought I
Okay.
felt that the woods had to be defended for at
Yeah.
least the
Yeah.
first 3 turns or so,
Okay.
so that the Italian tanks can't just set up out of sight of the ATR and the steeple. Um,
Right, because the Italians can come. Let me just show what happened to me. I'll show it on your map, though. Um, there's a route over here the Italians can take right this way, then over this way, and that's going to stay out of the line of sight. A couple of them can come here, and there's blind hexes here.
yeah,
Okay, so they could come right over here. And one of the reasons I was afraid of that because I didn't want him to just run right into. There's enough movement points they can actually get into the middle of the woods if you let them. Now you've done that. You've blocked that off by putting an
yeah,
ATR here.
yeah.
And I also was a little perhaps surprised, and maybe you can comment on this. I really thought that was a little bit too far forward for my taste on one of these heavy, well, high
Major machine
portage
gun.
point
Yeah,
machine guns.
yeah,
I remember another guy, Vinny, up in Scotland, of the Scotland fame guys. He's like, yeah. Once I saw your HMG, your medium machine gun was so far forward, I made deliberate efforts to
yeah,
cut off its route paths and break it.
yeah.
Now, so that's what I. What is your comment about that?
Well, I think, yeah, in the normal course of events, I wouldn't put a heavy gun like that so far forward, but
Yeah.
I felt that I had to do something to slow the Italians down, and that machine gun is an important part.
Well,
I mean,
sure.
it's not going to stay there. It can, as long as I don't break in turn one. The intention is to move back one hex in my turn, and then into the graveyard. The commissar would go back to join it before it advances into the graveyard, so it doesn't go CX, and it's just
So,
gradually fall back to the church.
so you go ahead and go like this into the graveyard, and then get wall advantage here,
Yeah,
so that you would be able to guard those two hexes.
yeah, and
Yeah,
ultimately, I'm probably going to fall back into the church itself.
and then
But
here,
it's all
right?
about delay. I mean, basically, if the Russian reinforcements can get to the victory area, I think they will win. But
Okay.
you've got to delay the Italians long enough to give them a chance to do that. Because my worry was that if I didn't defend the woods and the Italians got infantry along the wood line at the south, there, the other side of the church, the Russian reinforcements were going to be crossing open ground and would be cut up basically. And so I felt I had to defend the woods. I didn't like having the machine gun there, but I felt, it was a risk worth taking.
All
I
right.
felt. The other thing to remember is that all these units start off concealed, so
True.
the Italians don't actually know where the machine gun is. It could be where the ATR is. It could be where the commissar is there. Um,
I know, but
but
an aggressive Italian is just going to run right up and then make you shoot.
yeah, well, fine. But these are low morale Italian units, and they're going
Not
to get
all of them are. Some of them are
well,
sevens. A lot of
yeah,
them. In fact, I had to play with the balance because when we looked at this, and the my opponent got the balance, because if you look at the roar rating of this scenario, it's definitely pro-Russian,
yeah,
and I think that can be deceptive looking at the roar ratings for balance, because sometimes it's a matter of strategy, that people are using the wrong strategy, and those are the reasons why there's more Russian victories. Then I think that my opponent did a good job of avoiding that trap. That trap being, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, is making sure that you interdict the Italians coming on in strength, not the Italians coming on, but the Russians. And my opponent managed to position his tanks. He had four of them over here,
yeah,
like this. Of course, now that was screened from this ATR
yeah,
due to blind hexes, and he did send one tank at a long range over here to come in on the attack this way. He, of course, at this point in time, didn't really know where my guns were. So he even put some infantry over here, and he sent the 447s, which is the main. You say there's 346s, but a lot of them, and you get an extra one if you get the balance, which I gave him a machine gun in. We decided the Italians needed a lot, but in reality, Doug, didn't you think that that's not actually true? It's that Italians who are playing this and losing don't put enough interdictive force
yeah. I
to
think
stop the Russians from getting to the town.
that's probably right. I think that the whole
Yeah.
game hinges on whether the Italians can stop the Russian reinforcements, and that's why I think it's important to have an anti-tank rifle so that if your opponent does line up as your opponent did there, then he's going to get shot up the backside
Right.
at close range, and at that point, your ATR really is a potent weapon,
Let's
and
speak about that
will kill.
ATR. Yeah, let's speak. You put yours out front. Now, I
Yeah,
wouldn't have wanted to do that. Because he's got a flamethrower over here. I mean, so you know, uh, that's the reason I put mine. Maybe I got a little too cute, though. What do you think, Doug? I put mine deep into the woods, and he didn't know that that was what was there.
yeah,
If he wanted to run a tank up here, I was hoping then he would stop, and then I'd be able to use the ATR to take out a tank. As it is, I think he did run in. I forget what he did, but I think my ATR got neutralized quickly. And I don't know what happened. I think when you said you played, this ATR was quite effective.
Yeah, basically, my opponent didn't. He I think if I remember rightly, he
Hmm.
stopped virtually all his force at the wood line. He didn't try to cross the open ground.
Okay.
Um, I did shoot at him, I think, but I think he only had perhaps one squad just south of the hill. I can't mark it, but
Okay.
there
One
wasn't a
one
huge.
south.
His
What?
flamethrower wasn't threatening my machine gun. Let's put it that way, because
Oh, okay. Right here you're
obviously,
talking
yeah.
about.
I
Okay.
mean, he doesn't know where the machine gun is. The
No, he
machine gun could
doesn't,
be
does he?
anywhere there,
Could be
and I think,
here, here,
yeah, yeah.
here, or even up here.
And that's why I put the commissar with the 426 because I wanted. I mean, I think the way you've set your 426 up, you've basically deemed them to be expendable.
I did.
Uh,
Yes, you're
and
right.
and and normally 426s probably are expendable, but when you've got so few units
Okay.
at your disposal, I felt that I had to try and find something useful for them to do. So I kept the commissar to try and stiffen its resolve, and it was just going to fall back into the woods. And
Yeah, yeah, that's a
yeah,
good
with
point.
the commissar helping it, and it would set up maybe a couple of hexes back,
To,
and then if
to,
the Italians run into the woods, they're they're getting non-assault movement, and so eventually I had a defensive line where the
well, this would
uh,
be intimidating to the Italians. This big line here.
yeah, my first defensive line was starting at the cemetery. I had two units in the cemetery, and then the ATR gun was straight down from from the cemetery, and I mean,
Right.
my opponent, obviously, he didn't put his tanks in the best spots. Perhaps I got some shots from the steeple into the rear of his tanks because he didn't put them right up against the wood line. I suppose
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was not expecting
yeah,
this defense here where he went and put all of these tanks. I think one was here. I mean, there was two over here, two on this side, and another squad he'd run over this way and put into the stone building.
yeah,
So he had enough firepower there, and that's a whole nother discussion on how to bring in the reinforcements, but that's not the point of this video today.
yeah, yeah,
The point of this was okay, my defense, I think yours is much stronger here and more well thought out. And this is, I remember playing this scenario years ago, and I don't know if my mind has become more conservative or scared or something, but I think normally I would do something like this and fall back. Here, I've decided on two expendable units up front, and then this Alamo all the way back here, and it allowed the Italians to get very close to me quickly. It was
yeah,
not the right defense.
yeah,
And Toby Piling mentions that if you put expendable units out there and against an experienced player, they will get destroyed.
yeah,
And that's what he did. He came in, maybe he got a couple of guys pinned or something, but he got a guy here and a guy here and
yeah,
broke this, and it was dead.
yeah.
This one also broke, and it had to go here. So it was like that.
So that's why I put a 447 in the same spot where you've got your 426,
Yeah, yeah,
because I wanted the 426s to be able to shoot at the enemy, but the enemy would have to come to them first,
yeah.
as opposed to putting them up front where they could just be broken and disrupted even in turn one. I felt that you've got to preserve them so that they might be a 426, but as long as they don't cower, they're still putting 8 firepower into these adjacent wood
Well,
hexes
that's
and the
right.
Italians come running at them. And
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've seen these
even
right
seven
German.
morale units aren't going to enjoy getting 8 firepower attacks with no
No,
modifiers. 8 flats going
no,
to
no.
break them as often as not.
He didn't come
Yeah,
in undamaged, but if I'd had more support up
yeah,
here, that probably wouldn't have happened.
yeah,
This is what you avoided. He was not able to penetrate
yeah.
anywhere here.
I just made,
There's no
I
way
was
he can surround you here.
I was able to maintain my defensive line all the way to the end, and
Yeah,
actually took virtually no casualties, if I remember rightly. It was
yeah.
quite. It,
Oh,
I mean,
you were able to maintain this? Oh, that's
yeah.
excellent.
I mean, I got my machine
What
gun
happened to
back.
his flamethrower? That's another thing we should talk about
Yeah,
here.
yeah. His flamethrower, if I remember rightly, broke the first time he tried to fire it,
Okay.
and obviously that sort of thing helps when you're trying to defend this kind of scenario. Flamethrower. If he gets a lot
Right.
of shots with it, it can be deadly. But if it breaks at the first time of asking, then the Russians are off to a flyer.
Well, this is a
And
real
that's
wild card. Now, it's
yeah,
interesting about these flamethrowers. I did some probability calculations. this wasn't like mathematical rocket science here, but the expected number of shots you should get out of a flamethrower is 3 to 4 shots before it breaks down. Um, Now, I know there's people like me, I always seem like, okay, I'm going to break them on the first turn or second turn. But, of course, his lasted a long time. And he put it in a really good position. A good position for this flamethrower is right here.
Yeah.
Because he's just shooting across the graveyard at a 12 plus 1 or a 6 plus 1. Actually, upstairs would be a 6 flat.
Yeah.
And then, actually, I'm not so sure. That's just for LOS purposes. I still think it'd be a 12 flat by the SSR. That would still be treated as if it's level 1. It's only got an LOS of level 2. So this flamethrower right here just really, really was not something I needed. And he figured out that's the best place for it.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it. And that's one of the things I didn't think about is where is he going to put his flamethrower? In your defense, I wish I could just move this flamethrower over to this map, but I can't. Where did you think about what was going to happen to the flamethrower? Or were you just... I mean, there's two schools of thought I've been thinking about here. First, the flamethrower is so devastating that you got to target it and try to break the guy with the flamethrower. The second school of thought is it's going to run out of juice. Yeah. So don't try to do anything special. What is your attitude about this flamethrower in this scenario?
I'm trying to remember now. I know I did shoot the guys, the machine gun and the guy up above him. I'm not so sure about the other units. I maybe kept concealment with them. I mean, if I see a flamethrower that's within range and I'm concealed, then I'll possibly try to stay concealed. But the point is, I've got a commissar, and if guys break, then hopefully the commissar will rally them.
Well, that was one of my problems is the commissar broke on the first shot.
Yeah.
My commissar was here. He took a 12 plus 1, broken.
Yeah.
Which forced me then, at that point in time, I couldn't lose the church yet. So I had to run this machine gun up here, CX, to get into the building again. And again, he did a 12 plus 1 and again broke.
Yeah.
So there was just, if I had kept this flamethrower shooting over here instead of over here,
because that's it. I mean, if you break in the woods, you're routing back to where you want to be. Whereas if you break in the church, well, that's your Alamo, and if you have to get out of there, you're screwed.
My Alamo was here.
Yeah.
But yes, the whole thing is an Alamo, really.
Yeah. So I'd rather break and be breaking back to a position I'm wanting to defend anyway, because if as long as the commissar stays intact, chances are he'll rally the broken units, and then I'm in position for the next wave. I mean, it's right. There's no guarantee of success in any defense, but
you didn't really factor. See, I'm thinking, okay, we have something something has to happen. The flamethrower guy is really too powerful. In fact, he used the flamethrower later when I brought my tanks up the road.
Yeah.
I had a spoiling move when I brought my reinforcing tanks zipping down the road, running through and breaking a bunch of Italians from the backside. But he brought his flamethrower over there and just jetted it. Yeah, if you need an 8 or less, he rolled a snake eyes. Well, I think I would have got the woods. I don't think you even get the woods, do you?
No, you don't.
You're really the flamethrower is extremely powerful. So, now let's talk about one last thing: is the positioning of the guns. You chose to position the guns here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I put them in the Alamo. I remember seeing a defense like this. It's like, oh, that looks like an interesting defense. So I put them there. And you put them back over here, which I'd done before 10 or 15 years ago when I first played the scenario. I would put them where you put them. Tell me about your decision to put them back here instead of closer to the buildings themselves. Maybe you can explain that there to people.
I mean, I wanted to force the Italians to come at them, and by putting them where I did, well, where are they going to attack the guns from? They're basically, they're either going to have to come through the church where I've got plenty of units defending, or they have to come to the other side of that wall.
Right.
And then, that's a powerful artillery unit. It's going to hopefully do a fair bit of damage to any units that come from that direction. Also, they're there to cover the 447, which is going to retreat.
Are you talking about this
The
guy here?
guy in the front. But I mean, I don't plan to keep him there. So I wanted to have the guns there to give him some support. Um, I just, I mean, there's various places you can put them, but
Sure.
because they're worth a victory, they count as a building each. The further away they are from the Italians, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So I could see myself maybe falling back to the 2-hex building on the same line.
It's just that they can't really support these other builds. They can. I know why you did it, and I think I've done it that way before. Makes it really hard to get at those guns way over there. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean they're worth a point each. So
That's true.
the further away they are, I just need to hold one building location if the guns survive, and I'm hoping that my reinforcements will definitely get to the 2-hex building behind the church.
Okay. Well, I think for an Alamo defense, this isn't a bad place for them, though.
No. But I wasn't doing an Alamo defense. That was the difference. I was doing a fighting withdrawal defense.
Yeah. And I think another weakness of my defense here is, even though that might be a good Alamo position, what I didn't have, let me just get rid of that, was somebody, he came over here and just came this way.
Yeah.
And that this had been broken by that time. This guy was gone. Okay, so I didn't really have any good defenses to stop him from getting right up against the guns. Now, I did a lot of shooting and, talk about 5 out of 6 chance of losing the flamethrower. Well, I did some really good shots here, and then I had to take an intensive fire shot.
Yeah.
I spun the gun, and I rolled a 10. So, I couldn't... What he wasn't doing, I was doing. So that's just the luck of the draw. But I think that could have held out more than it did. I also lost one of my tanks over here, too. I think my Russian tanks have a B-11 or something. Do they? I'm not sure. No, they didn't. I've had another intensive fire shot. But one of his tanks came around the backside, and he mouthed his gun, and I mouthed mine. We were both looking at each other. It was quite funny. But is there any other comments you want to make about the defense here? I mean, we could certainly go on and talk about the play of the scenario, but it's really the defense.
Yeah, I think people are watching it. The lesson is you've got to think about what is your defense trying to achieve, and if it went for the reinforcements, this is an Alamo situation. But it's the fact that these reinforcements change the nature of the scenario.
Yeah.
Because it's so important to get those reinforcements up to the fighting area that my view was that you needed to keep your units in the woods and try and prevent the Italians from being able to prepare a reception committee. So that's why I went for the fighting withdrawal option rather than the Alamo, because the starting units are never going to survive an Alamo defense. The Italians are too strong. So you've got to think about how are you going to win this.
You need to delay long enough, and I didn't do that. That was the reason why. I mean, aside from the excellent play, I can't blame this all on my bad setup.
It doesn't matter.
But this is the kind of mistake that I make, is choosing the wrong defense. And so it's interesting. I just wonder how your mind realized, you know what, I need to have a fighting withdrawal here. Yeah. How did you? Let's get to the sort of the Jim Bishop part of it. Okay, how did you recognize this is not best as an Alamo defense? This is best as a fighting linear front / fighting withdrawal.
Well, I don't know if I've thought about it in exactly those terms. I just figured that this was a situation where you've got to slow the Italians down. You need to. It's a delaying defense.
Yeah.
You force them to stop at the woods if they don't want to cross open ground. Then you move back a hex or two. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're not assault moving concealed adjacent to your units, you can do a lot of damage. And that was really my thinking, that I wanted to force them to either come slowly, or if they wanted to
or
come more
break
quickly,
them.
then they were going to be facing 8 flat shots coming through the woods.
Yeah, and if they do that,
And
then they
that,
have to route back
yeah,
here. It takes them a long time to rally because they're
yeah,
Italians.
yeah.
Oh
I mean,
boy.
yeah, but even in the other woods, in the woods where I'm set up, I mean, I'm
You're
going to
talking
fall
about the,
back.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, right, right.
And they're going to be facing 8 firepower shots for the most part.
Yeah, you
And
mean as they go through this area,
yeah,
eight
yeah.
eight
If they come through the
firepower the
woods,
whole
exactly.
time,
Yeah, yeah.
and an 8 firepower plus one should do something. I
Well, it's
mean,
8 flat because
8 flat if
remember
they're
that they're
moving.
using non-assault movement, so you're
Well,
always
they could be. I
yeah.
mean,
So on average, they're going to face a one morale check every time they
if
go
they're
into one
not
of
in
those
the woods
woods.
yet,
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah.
okay, I see what you're saying. Right.
So you can the woods are yeah they don't provide much cover, but that's only a problem if the opposition can see you. But if they have to come at you through the woods, then and you're getting the first shot, then the Italians they're not going to like that.
Okay. Yeah,
So
absolutely
that
not.
was
They're not
how
going to like
I
breaking and
figured it.
routing. No, they're
Yeah,
not going to.
and if they break, the chances are they're not going to come back because their broken morale was so poor.
Yeah, it's true.
So
All right. Well, great analysis. I think those two articles are pretty interesting. Jim's is a bit abstract in my opinion, but I think it comes up with some basic concepts of
yeah,
hey, do you want to front line? If it's a mobile attack, they're gonna infiltrate you. If you defend in depth, you're not gonna have enough strength in the front line.
yeah, yeah,
So you have a lot of those thinking
yeah.
patterns that I think sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I play this game a lot. I know how to defend it. I'll just plop the
Yeah.
units on the map without
Yeah.
thinking it
Well, that's I
through
mean,
long enough.
like he mentioned the 5 different types of defense. Well, there's actually a sixth one. There's the just throw the counters on the board and hope for the best defense.
Yeah,
Which,
that's my
which
defense.
I
That's
mean,
why.
he didn't mention that one, but
Yeah,
I think
just drop them from
that's
the
I think
top and
that's
say, "Oh,
probably a
that
very
looks
common
good."
approach with a lot
Yeah,
of players is they just stick them out there and hope for the best. But I think Jim's article does
at
you know
least it tries to put some kind of a
it's quite
logical
interesting.
framework
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the
yeah. I
around
mean, I'm not
the
saying
the
it's
game.
yeah, it's not necessarily much always going to be I mean, a lot of the stuff he's got to say is practical use, but the defence one is more theoretical. It's just giving you the idea of concepts as opposed to practical
Yeah,
advice.
yeah, but I think I
Um,
like that. I mean, Toby's is great for practical advice,
yeah.
and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
some
So it's
cool
different.
things
Yeah.
in there that I don't always remember to take into consideration. Um, he's especially got some really interesting comments on foxholes and
Well, yeah,
why
yeah.
they're actually really hard to actually use for anything.
But the other thing which we've discussed and the both Toby and Jim Bishop sort of separately came to this gave the same advice, which is
Yeah.
when you're defending,
Hmm.
you don't have to try to stop the attacker doing everything
Right.
because it doesn't matter if the attacker's got to capture 6 buildings to win. Well, it doesn't matter if he's captured 5. You win. So as the defender, you need to focus on what is the minimum you need to do to stop the attacker achieving his objective, and that's how. And you deploy a couple. So you don't try and defend all 6 buildings in that situation. You
Right.
focus your defence on the one that's the most easily defensible, and that's where you put your fortifications and everything else that you have in your OB. And you don't worry about it doesn't matter if they take the other 5, you still win.
But I think
And I
the
think that's like
deception
an important
part is
concept.
yeah. Excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just saying that along with that, though, you do have to deceive the
Yeah,
attacker as to what is the actual minimum that you're trying to defend.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So,
Otherwise, he'll just zero in on that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then you're screwed because all your stuff is stuck in the
That's
one
right.
place.
Because I think Toby gave an example where there's 3 buildings to defend. The attacker needs 2 of them,
Okay.
and what you do basically is you put a strong defense in the middle one, a fairly strong one in one of the others, but then you put some couple half squads and a whole lot of dummy counters in the other one, and it's impossible for the attacker to know
Right. Yeah, that's the
what
thing.
what what
Yeah.
what is the strongly defended building. And so if he
Okay.
puts all his
Right.
force to attack the weakly defended one, well, he's never going to capture the other one. And
All right.
and
That's right.
so yeah, deception's very important. But this scenario doesn't give you much scope for that, I don't think. But
No, but I thought it was a good one to dissect as to what happened here. and I really appreciate your input on how your defense is, as it stands, seems to be far superior. It's interesting, the positioning of the guns. That's just kind of, with your way of doing it, it just makes it even harder for him to go find and go get them.
Exactly, they're harder to kill.
Yeah, harder to kill.
Yep.
Well, thanks a lot for this. We've gone
Okay.
about 45 minutes, so I don't want to go much longer. I'm going to try to get this up today. So let me stop the recording here. And